want to welcome you to the forum on the Alamance County Community and Public and Police Relations. This activity is being sponsored by the Alamance County, the concerned citizens of Alamance County, whose president is Mr. Michael Graves, is being partnered with the Alamance County Committee on Civic Affairs. Dorothy Yarborough is the president, and I'm Dorothy Yarborough. And the Ebenezer United Church of Christ, the Reverend Larry E. Covington, the Reverend Dr. Larry E. Covington is the pastor. So we want to welcome you to this evening's event. We think it is going to be an enlightening and informative event. We want you to begin to formulate your questions as you listen to our panelists. At the end, if you have questions, someone will be coming through the audience with a pencil and pad so that you may be able to write questions, and then we will take those questions and have those answered at the end. Also, coming through the audience, you will receive a survey. And if you wish to participate in that survey, we ask you to complete that. It has been developed by the Burlington Police Chief for all of the regions. So we ask you to participate in that as well. This is an enlightening forum, and so we want you to sit back, listen, and then ask questions. This is your opportunity to have a dialogue with the police departments of Alamance County. I bring forth now the Burlington Police Chief, Chief Smiley.
Again, we very much appreciate everybody's desire to come participate on this on a frigid evening, and to get you out of the house and down here is quite a comment on your commitment to our community. I want to take a moment to recognize a number of dignitaries that have chosen to join us, and we very much appreciate their participation as well. So if you'll bear with me as I run through this list. So when I call your name, if you just stand for a moment, and then we'll give everybody that's listed a round of applause at the end, and that'll get us through this in a timely fashion, please. So Dan Engel, Chairman of the Alamance County Board of Commissioners, is here. Pat Nadowski, the DA. Please stand, folks, and people will get a look at you. DA. Jerry Peterman, Mayor of Graham. Lenny Williams, Mayor of Town of Gibsonville. Lee Lovett, Fall River Town Council. Kathy Hikes, Burlington City Council. Patsy Simpson with the school board. Bob Bird, County Commissioner. Great. Kelly Allen, Mayor Pro Tem, Town of Fall River. Barrett Brown, President of the NAACP. Paul Dean, Town Alderman in Gibsonville. Bob Ward, City Council in Burlington. Ronnie Wall, Mayor of Burlington. Tony Rose, Board of Education. Jim Butler, City Council in Burlington. And Cassabaum, Human Relations Council. Evelyn Graves Curtis, Burlington Housing Authority at the Healing Station. Ben Baxley, the Gibsonville Manager. Pam Thompson on the school board. Dr. William Harrison, the Superintendent. Harold Owen, the City Manager in Burlington. Lee Kimry, Council in Graham. Pamela Thompson already, Board of Education. Dorothy Yarborough, we've met. Burlington Housing Authority. Lee Kimry we covered, and Paul Hardy. Heights Journey, UCC. Phil Hardy. Great. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate you, your presence here today. Thank you very much. And if I missed someone, I'm very sorry. We really do appreciate you being here. This is, I think, a fairly momentous occasion for our community to come together for dialogue, for conversation, for all the right reasons. The chiefs, all of us are committed. We've met a number of times clearly in the planning of this event. We met several times in the planning of the march that we had at the end of December for similar reasons, to be leaders in our community, I forgot to do the math before we got here, but each one of these gentlemen has between 20 and almost 30 years. Sheriff, maybe a couple more than that. But he started very young. He started when he was 12, so it's all good. But, you know, we have a ton of experience, and I share that with you because I think it's important to recognize that these men have risked their lives for decade after decade after decade with the sole purpose of sustaining people's civil rights. Literally. To nurture and protect democracy has been the foundation of our adult lives the whole time. And so it brings us the highest level of pleasure to be here to focus on exactly those things in our community. To make sure that we listen to every single one of you, to hear all of your concerns, and to factor those concerns into our decisions moving forward. We recognize that we might not have the most perfect police departments. And we want to know the places where we're weak so we can grow to be stronger. And so we're very much excited to be here. Please be forthright in your comments. If you don't have a chance to ask your particular question, put it on that feedback form. We've given an opportunity for you to list your name and phone number and tell us what city you're in, and that chief will call you back, or that staff person will call you back and do our very best to answer your absolute question. We want to know what you know so that we can better serve and protect you moving forward. That is as sincere as we can make it from every single one of us to every single one of you. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to the next hour and a half or so of enlightened and sincere dialogue. We thought long and hard about how to start this off, and we're going to do some introductions of each of us. We've got a short script that we designed for ourselves, so we're going to cover the exact same thing for the most part about each police department, so you get some quick overview of that. And then we're going to transition to an informative video that talks about, in general, how police use force and why they use force, and debunk a few myths about the use of force for police. The video was filmed in Oregon, but it applies to all police departments across this country. Citizens in every community want to know, why do we use a taser? Why don't we use a taser? When we use a firearm, what happens? What happens with the investigation? And this 15-minute video will, I think, give you some good highlights for that, and may frame some questions that you have later in the evening. So in order, Ron, why don't you come up, Chief Parrish from Gibsonville, and we'll let him give his spiel.
Thank you, Chief Mike. I too am very honored to be here, and we look forward to having a very fruitful evening, and I'm sure we're all going to learn something from one another. My name is Ron Parrish. I'm the police chief in the town of Gibsonville. I am a U.S. Army veteran, but more importantly, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm an assistant scoutmaster, but I'm also a resident of this community. So, like you, I also have a vested interest in what transpires here. So we want to make sure that whatever it is that we can do, that we do it right, or at least ways we try to do it right. I'm sort of like the sheriff too. I got 40 plus years of law enforcement experience. I started out with the State Capitol Police in Raleigh, went with the Cary Police Department. It's been over 25 years with the North Carolina Alcohol Law Enforcement Division. I retired from there as a special agent in charge. Worked with Sheriff Johnson for 6 years. I retired from there as a major river administration. I have an AS degree in police science. I have advanced law enforcement certificates from both the police and the sheriff's training standards. I'm a graduate of the North Carolina Public Manager Program, where I've received the Certified Public Manager designation by the National Certified Public Managers Consortium. We're a small town, but we have a lot of big town problems. Our authorized strength of sworn officers are 15, which also includes me. We serve a population of approximately 7,000 people. I think the last census back in, the last census in 2012 was like 6,550 people, somewhere in that neighborhood, but it's grown quite a bit since then. In fact, the town of Gibsonville has grown over 50% since the year 2000. Our police department has not. Our 2014 to 2015 budget is $1.3 million. And a lot of times people look at that, my God, $1.3 million for a small town police department, that's a lot of money. But if you put it in perspective, if you take that budget and you divide it by the number of people that we have in town, you're only looking at 54 cents minutes a day per person. And I submit to you that that's a whole lot of money per buck. You're getting a lot back for what you pay. We have a chief of police, assistant chief. We have a lieutenant that's over criminal investigations. We have one that's over patrol. We have 2 patrol sergeants, and we have 8 patrol officers. One of those is also assigned to work in liaison with our Workers Association, our Senior Citizens Center, and he also works animal control. So he wears a lot of different hats. And one of the things that we're trying to do too is to get him more involved with community watch programs as we move forward. In the year 2013, we averaged around 500 calls for service per month. Doesn't seem like a whole lot, but when you're looking around 45 minutes average per call, it adds up. So far this year, our call volume has increased around 20% to where it averages around 602 calls per month, calls for service per month. So that's quite a bit. Tasers, well, I think we were asked about tasers. Our board Monday night voted to allow me to spend some additional money so we could issue tasers to each one of our officers. We're in the process of doing that, and so within the next couple of weeks, every single officer in the town of Gibsonville will be carrying a taser. Our patrol vehicles are equipped with cameras, so we do video every single vehicle stop that we make, so we do have that information available. We have looked at body cameras. We were testing one that, quite frankly, we had a couple of weeks that broke, so we had to send it back. But if you stop and think about probably the number of law enforcement agencies throughout the country now that are testing these body cameras, I can understand why it broke, but hopefully we'll get another one back. The unique fact about the town of Gibsonville, not only is it unique, but it is also challenging, because half of our town sits in Guilford County. So that means that not only do we have to deal with everybody in Alamance County, so we have a different district attorney's office here, we have to deal with the DA's office in Guilford, we have 2 different court systems, we have 2 different jails. So just imagine, like a lot of these guys, they deal with one, we have to deal with 2. And a lot of times we'll have an issue that might start in one county and wind up in another county. And a lot of times our officers are going in so many different directions, they don't really know where they're headed, quite frankly. But we are up to the challenge, and we look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. Thank you.
Our next chief is Jeff Pritchard from Graham.
Thank you. Good evening again. My name is Jeff Pritchard. I represent the city of Graham as the police chief. One thing about us is that we are your county seat. We house the court system and the sheriff's office and a few other governmental agencies, and we have quite a bit of activity on most days of the week. We have 35 sworn police officers in Graham. We have 3 civilian staff. We have a roughly a little less than 15,000 population that we serve every day, which is about 10 square miles, give or take. We also have a total budget of about $3.2 million for the current year. Hoping that'll go up, Mayor. We have a rank structure very similar to what Chief Parrish talked about. We don't have assistant chiefs. I have chiefs and captains, and I have lieutenants and sergeants and down forth, and so forth, as you'll hear other chiefs talk about. We do have tasers. We issue, every officer has tasers, and our school resource officers have tasers that have cameras on them. We don't have cameras on the ones in the field, but the ones in the schools do have cameras, so they record every deployment of the taser. And it's also in our vehicles, we have our cars are all equipped with cameras. They come on when blue lights are activated or when a certain speed is triggered by the patrol vehicle. We also are looking at body-worn cameras, as Chief Parrish talked about. We're trying to decide what's the best way to go about that. There's a lot of things, a lot of different concerns that we all have with the use of body cameras, with privacy for folks and how they can be best deployed within our agency. We answered almost 19,000 calls for service this last year, which made us pretty busy. We look forward to always hearing from our citizens. My office is open. I take calls. I took one just before I came here. Always ready to hear from our citizens. We can't know what our problems are unless our citizens call in. And I always look forward to sitting down with anyone who has a concern for our citizens in Graham, and we can be the best police department we can be. We are an accredited agency. I'm very proud of that. We look to continue to be, and just look forward to this discussion this evening. Thank you.
Terry Johnson, the Sheriff of Alamance County.
of all, I'd like to thank everybody that had anything to do with bringing this forward tonight, because I think it's going to be very important for our communities. My name is Terry Johnson. Sheriff of Alamance County has been so since 2002. It's been an honor to serve as your sheriff. Alamance County is a growing county and a very unique county in many ways, but I think we should be very proud of what we have here in Alamance County. Currently, the Alamance County Sheriff's Department employs 131 full-time deputies, 127 full-time detention officers. Last year, in 2013, so last year, 2013, we answered 44,093 calls for service. Our population in Alamance County, we will give us 154,378. You say, well, that's the cities too. Well, the Sheriff's Office has to serve all the civil papers in the cities and also take all inmates that's been taken into custody that's brought to the Alamance County Jail from every one of the law enforcement agencies and the state agencies in Alamance County. Our jail currently holds 476 inmates, and that's 24 hours, 7 days a week service. My budget is a total of $409,835. That's broken up into our operations, which is our enforcement side, outside deputies of $9,776,489. Our detention budget is $9,210,671. And then we have a school resource officer budget, which is help funded by our school system of $422,675. Folks, that's a big budget, but when you look at the territory covered and the number of personnel it takes to run the detention center, it's a job, but it's a very important job to this county. Tasers, we issue our officers tasers. In-car cameras, we have in-car cameras in our vehicles, which videos whatever happens in front of the car. In 2013, we had 2,585 persons that our agency arrested in Alamance County, not counting what the other cities and the state brought in. The total charges was 15,195 charges. We had that year 2 citizen complaints, and they were all both unfounded. One was unfounded, was resolved as not a legitimate claim. Alamance County is a very big county, and folks, we should be proud of what we have here in Alamance County. I'm going to say this, the gentleman seated in front of you and to the side of me right here, I've been in law enforcement 43 years and I've worked a lot of territories with the SPI. I was a 30-year veteran with the SPI prior to running for sheriff. We have one of the best group of chiefs of police we have ever had in my career as a law enforcement officer. We all share the same visions for our communities. We all share the concerns of what's going on in our nation today. And we're going to work to see that we do what is supposed to be done properly in this county. Because you, the citizens, are our bosses. And the services we provide, you are paying for with your tax money. And with that, I will turn it back over to the chief to introduce the next chief.
Thank you, Sheriff. Neil Dickens with Hall River.
Good evening. My name is Neil Dickens. I am the Chief of Police for the town of Hall River. Been with Hall River for 28 years. I started my career there, and I'm hoping I'm going to finish it there. We have the distinction of being the smallest police agency in Alamance County. There's a total of the counting myself, 8 officers. Myself, I serve as chief, I have an operations captain, I have 2 investigators and 4 patrol officers. We have a small budget compared to what you hear here tonight. Our total operating budget is about $615,000. We cover roughly 2.66 square miles for the Alamance County. It's covered the Haw River city limits. We responded last year to about 4,500 calls. That's an average for about each year of dispatch calls. That does not include calls that come into the police department that the officers dispatch out to themselves. We do not have an office staff. Our officers work on everything at the office. We maintain all of our clerical staff and everything done by the officers. We do issue tasers to every officer. They are recertified every year, and the proper use of that, we have 2 taser instructors that are certified every 2 years. They certify our officers every year in the proper use of that, proper use of force. We do employ video cameras in our cars. Each marked patrol car has a camera system that records all video in front of the car. The officers have a wireless mic that they carry with them doing that. We are looking at the use of body cameras. At this point, we've not made any commitments as to which way we'll go with that. Thank you.
The next chief is Terry Caldwell with Mebane.
Good evening. I'd like to first recognize one of the City of Mebane officials that has chosen to join us, Mr. David Cheek, our city manager. Mr. Cheek, if you'll just kind of put your hand up. We've acknowledged our representatives here just before you got here. Thanks for coming out and supporting the cause. Again, I'm Terry Caldwell, Chief of Police with Mebane. I've been with the City of Mebane for approximately 23 years. I have 30 plus years of law enforcement experience. As a matter of fact, my only service to my country, to my county, and to you all has been in a law enforcement capacity. That tour will soon come to an end. I hope that before it does, that we can all come together with the existing problems and issues that have arisen over the last couple of years or so. The City of Mebane, we are a population of just over 12,000. We have 27 sworn officers. We cover a square mileage area of approximately 9 miles. We have a total authorized budget of about $2.842 million. Mr. Chief, we hope that that grows significantly next year. And our rank and file structure is very similar to what the other chiefs and the sheriffs have spoken about. We responded in 2013 to over 16,000 calls for service. That represents over a 6% increase from the previous fiscal year. So as everybody here knows, I think the City of Mebane is growing by leaps and bounds, and we certainly hope to resemble that growth from the police department's perspective. We do issue tasers to each and every one of our patrol officers. As Chief Dickens said, they are yearly recertified on the use of tasers. We also have cameras for all of our police cars. We do not have any body-worn cameras at this time. I'll be covering a segment a little bit later on explaining where law enforcement is, and I think what the direction of the group in general is in terms of body-worn cameras. We know that that's a significant issue and a question to all, so we hope to address that and kind of give an understanding of where we're headed with that. Mebane is also in a unique situation that we border and actually encompass a small percentage of Orange County. So we're dealing with 2 judicial systems as well, which makes law enforcement challenging at times. The agency is currently undertaking the accreditation process. Long and short of that, it's rebuilding their policies to meet certain guidelines. And you heard some of the other chiefs speak of having achieved that success already. It's a long, tedious process, but accreditation in and of itself, I think, helps facilitate and address some of the issues that might arise as it relates to community issues, policies, procedures, etc. So again, going forward with the program, I hope that we can answer a lot of the questions and quite honestly dispel a lot of the myths and concerns that exist about everything that's going on. My hope, because I don't know if I'll get an opportunity to share this with you before we close here, is that you take what you hear today, this evening, back to someone else. I reflect back on the march from a couple of weeks ago, and as I looked at those who came and participated, one of the things that concerned me was that the people that were there, the stakeholders that were present, were they really the people that we need to be communicating with? Were they really the audience that we need to be addressing? So I'm going to ask you, if I don't get a chance to do so later, to take what you hear, to take what's shared here, and pass it on to someone else out in our community. We're not going to get everybody to these forums. We're not going to reach everybody ourselves. But we can certainly start by reaching out to the people that are not here, the people that we know, the people in our circle, to get a message that in Alamance County, we're going to work collectively, we're going to work as a team, and we're going to ensure that our people are cared for, that you can go about your daily business in a safe and comfortable manner. Thank you.
Great comments, Chief. Thank you. Cliff Parker, the town of Elon.
I stand between you and the rest of this program, so we will be brief. It's also my privilege to serve with my fellow chiefs here and to sit next to my good friend, Terry Caldwell. We go back a long way, but very challenging to follow, my good friend. My name is Cliff Parker. I'm the police chief of the town of Elon Police Department. I have 32 years of law enforcement experience. I began my career after graduating from the great University of Elon, along with my wife who's here. Graduating from Elon, went to work for the Burlington Police Department, and then spent 25 years with the SBI. And I was not trying to follow in the footsteps of our sheriff. And then I've been privileged to be at the town of Elon for the past 3 years. We are the town of Elon Police Department. Our fine county chairman of the county commissioners here, he's a retired police chief at the town of Elon. So I had big footsteps to follow there. We are 15 officers strong, 15 sworn officers, including myself, similar to the other departments of our size. We serve a population of approximately 9,700 citizens, which we also have the privilege of, in our community, we have Elon University. So within that capacity, there are more, at times, more members of our community in our community. But they also have a great police department that we serve with. The chief could not be here tonight, but we are partners. We're all partners with him. Chief Dennis Franks and the University Police Department is a great partner for us. And so we work well with them, and that makes our population higher, but we also have some force multiplication. We have approximately 4.5 miles, square miles in Elon that we serve. We have a budget of approximately $1.8 million. We have similar rank structure that you've heard here. We responded in 2013 to approximately 5,800 calls for service. We have, all of our patrol officers are issued tasers with cameras. All of our patrol cars are equipped with in-car cameras. We began exploring body-worn cameras prior to this national discussion because it's part of the ongoing technology that we see in law enforcement, and we're always, as law enforcement professionals, and the successes I've had in my career have been because I'm surrounded by great folks that I've worked with, other members of law enforcement community, and people that study these things, so we take advantage of that. So we've been looking at all the technology that's out there, and it's an ongoing process. It's not as easy as just getting one and putting it on. There's calls, there's type, there's procedures. You'll hear more about that, but we are exploring that and hope to utilize that technology if it's the best thing for us to do. We are also in the process, we will begin the lengthy process of seeking CALEA accreditation in the town of Elon, and that is a very lengthy process. The departments that are already accredited here have led the way, and so we will be seeking to do that also. And it is my privilege to serve in law enforcement in this community. I'm a transplant from Cumberland County, Fayetteville, North Carolina, and it's where I was raised. Came here in the 70s and worked around the state. Had the privilege of working in all 100 counties in our state and serving in the capacity that I've been in law enforcement. And I can tell you that making Alamance County our home, where we raise our 3 daughters and 3 grandchildren and future more grandchildren, no pressure. Look forward, or I should say I know that this is just a great place to live and to work and to partner with one another and with each other in our community. So I'm privileged to be here and to serve here, and I thank you for all of your support and look forward to what lies ahead and what we can learn from the input that we'll receive. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Chiefs. So I round out the House here, and I'll cover the Burlington information. So again, I'm Jeff Smythe, the police chief here in Burlington. I've been a police officer for 29 years. The vast majority of that time was in Arizona. So when Cliff says he's a transplant from Fayetteville, I get a bigger distance, I guess. So, everything comes with pros and cons. I'm the outsider a little bit. I have to learn the laws here. I have to learn the culture here. But the upside is I get to come into the city of Burlington with a fresh perspective. I get to look at things with some different eyes, and my people groan a little bit because my standard question is, why do we do that? And when the answer is, well, we've always done it that way, they groan and know that there's about to be a change coming along, because if there's not a good reason, then there's probably room for some growth. So that's kind of my experience piece, I think, that I bring to the puzzle is how can we learn and grow, and my transplant nature, I think, gives me some strengths there. I'm very proud to serve with 125 police officers in the city of Burlington, along with 45 civilian employees that are literally the backbone that allow the 125 to go out and do what they do. They're allowed to do that because of the civilian workforce that takes care of all the minutia that goes on in the department. It's fantastic. We serve and keep safe about 52,000 residents in the city of Burlington. We police a jurisdiction of about 32 square miles. We do that with a budget of $15.5 million. And you heard the theme. I won't beat the dead horse, but each and every one of us experiences shortfalls in our ability to train our people, equip our people, and put the right number of cops on the street. And we require you citizens to be actively involved in talking to the elected officials that are in this room about whether you want us to grow or not. That's how the system works. We encourage you to be active in whatever realm you see fit, whether it's with the school board or county government, city government, please be involved. Our rec structure is the same as everybody else. We handled a total of about 77,000 police incidents, calls for service from citizens, as well as officer-initiated activity. 77,000 calls there. All of our officers have tasers, I think, except me. I sit in an office too much. It's one extra piece of gear I didn't need to have. All of our police cars, the marked cars, all have car cameras. We've purchased about a dozen body cameras up front. We're working on, as everybody here said, what that looks like logistically moving forward. And the fun fact for us is the accreditation piece that we've been accredited for 25 years. We've been accredited with excellence. We have some of the highest awards from the accrediting body. And to frame for all of you the accreditation piece, I'll say this. There are 18,000 federal, state, and local police departments in America. 18,000. Only 1,000 or less at any given time are in the process to attempt or achieve accreditation. The vast majority of the agencies in America don't even try to be accredited because for one reason or other they might not be able to do that. And the bulk of us are there or going there, and that legitimately puts Alamance law enforcement in the top 1% in the country. So that's something that I think we all should be very proud of and have some level of confidence building that we subscribe to the best practices of our industry. That's what accreditation is about. So I'll wrap that for the City of Burlington at that point. So the next piece of business is we're going to vacate our chairs for a little bit. They're going to play this video, and I hope you enjoy the information it imparts to you. Take a couple of notes, and then we'll get back together for some more conversation.
The stakes are very high in what we do, and the decisions that we make are profound decisions that have lasting impact for us and for the people around us.
If an officer shoots a suspect in the course of his job and the person dies, it's still considered a homicide.
Police officers have a very unique job. They go out and risk their life doing it, and then after they have done it and done it well, they have now become a de facto suspect in a felony crime.
It's important for the public to understand the way our system is structured and what the dynamic is in officer-involved shootings.
When I first started working with police officers involved in shootings, there were things I began to notice right off the bat, even though I really didn't know a whole lot about police operations. As I would talk to the many officers involved in these events, follow them through the investigations, follow them through the media response and the community questions, some things became clear. One is that we were expecting these events to defy the laws of physics. We were expecting these officers to defy the limits of human performance. We often expect them to have a perfect memory and make perfect decisions, when in fact research clearly shows that human beings are not capable of either one of those things. That the training and the judging of police officers is frequently based on myths, assumptions, and personal opinions that necessarily may not be true.
We've become such a video culture, and we rely on what we see in TVs and movies to such a great extent, often without even really being aware of it. There's a tremendous amount of misinformation out there, and to the extent that the public has that as context, it makes it very difficult for them to evaluate whether an officer has behaved appropriately in the use of force application.
This is a difficult thing for the agencies to overcome, trying to explain these events to the world at large who've been trained by Hollywood rather than what really happens.
Most officer-involved shootings unfold rapidly, very rapidly. In fact, our research tells us, and we've got video after video of officers being shot in a real-world encounter, that the threat can unfold as rapidly as a quarter of a second or less. And that is faster than any human being can react to a visual stimulus.
In officer-involved shootings, we have to never forget that it is literally the offender that calls the shots. Officers or anybody who is reacting to what another person is doing is always going to be behind the time curve.
Anyone who is assaulting an officer can assault them faster than they can react. Even if you're prepared, you understand it's about to happen. You can't deal with this type of speed of an encounter.
Patrol officers often are put in a reactionary mode because they're responding to a course of events, or they're responding to a person's behavior. Because of the inherent delay involved in the action-reaction dynamic, an officer is already put at a disadvantage.
Unlike the offender, the officers also have to be concerned about the public safety. So they are checking for their environment, checking for bystanders, and being concerned about their own personal safety. The offender is focused on one thing: can I assault this officer and get away with it?
Officers bring a number of tools in their toolkit to a conflict situation. And one of those tools is good communication skills, and in particular, persuasion.
Most of the time, officers do in fact talk the person down. If you look at the research, Only about 1% of all police calls for service result in any use of force at all. And of course, only a very small percentage of those actually result in the use of deadly force. So in 99% of the cases, officers are able to resolve situations peacefully.
And because of the chemical issues, emotional issues, sometimes a variety of other elements, the person is unwilling or unable to listen to anything that the officer says. That means they're in control of the situation. They're the actors, the officer's a reactor, and the officer then has to respond to what the person is doing.
So not all offenders can be stopped, not all offenders can be talked out of what they're getting ready to do, and sometimes it just happens regardless of what the officer is going to do. At that point, the only thing that the officer can do is use force in an attempt to protect his life and protect the public.
It's not the officer's choice, usually, not to use verbal skills. It's the person being unable to listen or to attend or unwilling to what the officer is saying. Some people think that an individual who's armed with a knife is not a dangerous threat to an officer. And from our research, and certainly the research of others, we know that not to be true. Knives can actually be more dangerous than a gun. They don't have to be reloaded. They can be used at close distance. From our research, we know that a young person and someone who's in reasonably good shape can cover as much as 31 feet in the time span it takes an officer to draw a gun, point, and fire one round. Now, if the person is 7 feet away, the officer could even have the gun out in a low-ready position. But by the time they raise the gun and fire, even once, they would be stabbed. And we know that a stab from a knife or a stab with a cut can be extremely quick. And each of those cuts or slashes can occur less than a quarter second per stab. And any one could be dangerous, could be lethal to the officer. Well, certainly there's a variety of less lethal munitions that an officer can bring to a situation, whether it be beanbags, sponge rounds, tasers, even impact weapons. And the idea is that these are all good tools, and they've got their place in an officer's repertoire or toolkit. But they should not be used in a deadly force encounter.
Police are trained not to kill people, not to taser people. They are trained to stop the threat. And unfortunately, use of less lethal and lethal force does not automatically result in stopping the imminent attack.
So officers do have an obligation to assess the situation and to use the appropriate levels of force so that it doesn't put themselves in even greater jeopardy, or other officers who are with them, or civilians who are nearby, or the community at large in general.
One of the things that I remember seeing on TV back in the days when I watched my cowboy heroes was I watched the Lone Ranger and Roy Rogers and Gene Autry shoot the gun out of somebody's hand or shoot the knife out of their hand. And what we know from a dynamic real-world encounter is an officer is, for the most part, unable to do that. Either whether it's shooting a knife or a gun out of the hand, shooting someone in the arm, or even shooting them in the leg. Officers do not have the capability of firing accurately and hitting accurately in a dynamic encounter. And so it's an unimaginable challenge that we're facing officers with if we make them shoot the gun or the knife out of the hand or shoot to wound. It just can't happen. It's one of those Hollywood myths that Hollywood likes to perpetrate, looks good on film, doesn't work in the real world. Even if we aim for center mass, we tend not to be as accurate as we might on the range, because the dynamics of an encounter and the dynamics by which people move in real-world deadly force encounters are such that center mass is a constantly changing target. So it's the best place an officer can aim for. The best chance that they can hit someone is if they aim center mass. But even then, it's not guaranteed. But it's a lot better than trying to aim for a hand or an arm. I was investigating a shooting in which an officer fired 4 rounds. The officer, like just about every other officer in North America, can fire using their semi-automatic handgun in a quarter of a second per round. So by the time I say 1,000 N, this officer's fired 4 rounds. Now, in that time span, the subject who had just begun to step forward toward the officer and was shot and then fell through the plane of gunfire in this fashion was shot from the front and side and then the back and side. Now, certainly, it looked like the officer shot him in the back, and it was very true. The shots did go into the back. But in the time span it took the officer to fire and for the subject to fall through the plane of fire, there was nothing that the officer could have done to have stopped shooting the subject in the back in that 3/4 of a second. So the officer was still shooting to save his life, but the subject was moving and falling. People tend to think that a video is an accurate reporter of any particular incident. But I would like you to look at the number of cameras that are necessary for referees to look at during any football game. The more cameras they have, the more angles they can see things from, the better their judgment is about whether or not the action that they're judging is portrayed accurately and completely. So we know that one video camera from a particular perspective is very limited in its ability to see anything. Even, for instance, there's a camera that officers are wearing that sits just in front of the officer's ear. And this is reportedly has the view of the officer. It does not. If you close your left eye, for instance, you will see what your right eye sees. And your right eye sees a different field of view than your left eye. And your body links both of those. Now imagine you're a camera far behind your right eye. What is that seeing? That's seeing what's directly in front of the face, not even what the right eye is seeing. It certainly doesn't show the field of view on the left. No camera records things as an officer's eye and brain is recording it that's really embedded in the situation. Just as a quarterback is seeing the different field of view than the viewer is sitting at home watching the camera capture the action on the football field. An officer-involved shooting is a tragedy. It's always a tragedy. It's a tragedy for the deceased. It's a tragedy for the families, friends, loved ones of the deceased. It's a tragedy for the officer. Officers don't want to have to shoot people. They don't want to have to kill them. They will do so if needed. That's part of the job requirements. But it's a tragedy for them too, because they could face prison, ruin, they could lose their job. Certainly a civil suit is not unusual in officer-involved shooting cases. It's tough for an officer. It's tough for them to take someone's life. More importantly, they will likely shoot to save their life. And it's usually surprising, if not really traumatic for an officer, to come face to face with their own death. Most of us never do that.
The stress of these events can happen within a 3 to 5 second period, which is the time of the actual event itself. But any officer involved in this will tell you that by far the most stressful part of the event is everything that happened afterwards. And that's why it's really important that we do a lot of research and be very careful that our investigations of these events provide a fair, neutral, objective, and fact-finding investigation that will educate everybody, the public, the agency, and the officers, about what really happened so that we can have a successful outcome.
Several years ago, the Oregon legislature created Senate Bill 111, and that provided a general structure that allowed each of the counties to then create plans within that structure for the processing of officer-involved shootings. Lane County was among the first in the state to put together a protocol consistent with Senate Bill 111 for processing of officer-involved shootings, and also the required public outreach that should happen on an annual basis. Our protocol created an IDFIT team, and that stands for Interagency Deadly Force Investigations Team. And that's a multi-agency team where the police agencies each contribute a member or 2 members, typically, to participate in the investigation, with the lead on the team either being the county sheriff or the state police, depending on whether one or the other is involved in the shooting. The idea is to have the principal agency or the lead agency be not involved in the shooting, so the public understands that there is an impartial investigation taking place. The protocols have allowed for a systematic review. That's the whole idea, is to have a process that's followed in every case, and one which the public can have some faith is being conducted in an impartial and systematic manner.
Yeah, it's our job as the EdFit team to conduct an investigation and to bring those facts to the DA's office. It's the DA's office's job to make a decision on whether or not the shooting was justified and the use of force was appropriate. And then it's the officer's agency that's involved, its job to decide whether or not policy and procedure were followed properly for their particular agency.
The most time-consuming portion of the process is the evidence gathering. That's talking to witnesses, reviewing videotape if there is any, gathering all of the evidence and sort of digesting it into police reports, which are all then packaged and presented to the DA.
The EdFit team itself makes it very easy to accomplish these tasks, because when we were individual agencies, we didn't have the resources to get a lot of these things done in a timely manner. With the team bringing in 12 detectives from 4 or 5 different agencies, it brings us so many resources in such a short period of time. It allows us to get a lot of this stuff done quickly and real efficiently. Yeah, I understand it's frustrating for the media and the public when we don't provide the information that they're looking for. And in all honesty, it's frustrating for us too, because we want to be able to tell you what happened, especially if it's an officer who's done something outstanding, saving somebody's life. But just to keep the integrity in the investigation and to make sure that nothing's tainted, we hold on to that information.
Sometimes in these situations, officers are forced to work on a limited set of facts, and they're forced to make quick decisions that have huge ramifications with a very short amount of time and a limited set of facts. And officers are trying to make those decisions as best they can.
I hope that people will understand that police operations are very complicated, very difficult, sometimes they're very hard to understand. Obviously, when a member of the community is hurt, it's understandable that people become emotional about that. And the most important message I want to give to everyone is that we need to refrain from a rush to judgment, that things may not always be as they appear. And we want people to give the officers, these are public servants, good men and women doing a very difficult job, and the least that we can do is provide them the benefit of the doubt while the investigations are going on.
Thank you, Chief. There are a lot of things that we do that, quite frankly, the public a lot of times sort of takes for granted or they never really hear about. So I certainly had the pleasure tonight to speak with you guys about some of those programs. Probably one of the best community-based programs that we have in Alamance County is sitting right up here on this stage. We are a program. We're a program that deals with relationships, and you know as well as I do that relationships are what builds trust, and the relationships between these law enforcement agencies are something to know. I too, like Chief Parker and Sheriff Johnson, I worked in a lot of counties in the state, and I submit to you that you will not find a better working relationship among a group of chiefs and sheriff anywhere in the state than what you have right here in Alamance County. You just won't find it. But some of the things that we do that allow us to partner with our community is a citizen police academy that actually was Burlington PD as well as the Sheriff's Office has already won. Quite frankly, Chief Parker and I have discussed the possibility of us jointly starting a citizens police academy. I think that gets a lot of information out. Crime prevention, we talk to people about crime prevention every single day. Explorer Post, I'd love to have one. I know Burlington PD has one, Graham has one. Junior Police Academy, we're dealing with some of our problem children or problem kids where all of the agencies pretty much come together with these kids in the summertime. Ride-along programs, primarily as a result of some of these, the Citizen Police Academy, that gives you, the citizen, an opportunity to see these officers really at work, and you can really see what they do. Vacation checks, hey, Who doesn't want to leave on vacation, not worry about the house being broken into? Call the police department, we'll certainly come out and we'll check that house for you every day that you're gone. School resource officers, we have them that teach DARE, GRADE, which is the gang resistance education, care, child abuse reduction effort, community-oriented policing. One of the things that we do in Gibsonville, and I know a lot of us do, we do an old-fashioned foot patrol. We get out, we walk downtown, we go over to our senior citizens area, we get out, we walk, we talk to people, we build those relationships. In fact, in Guilford County, which our elementary school is located in Guilford County, we're the only agency in Guilford County that still has a DARE officer working in the elementary school. The only one. We're still doing it. Do I have the people to do it? No, but we're going to still do it. That's just what we do. ANET, Alamance County Narcotic Enforcement Team. It doesn't really matter which town you're in or where you are in the county, drugs affects you. We all came together as a group. We created ANET. Another crowning achievement in Alamance County is the Family Justice Center. Think about that. That is a crowning achievement. It's got national recognition, from a lot of people. It all started as a dream. It all came together. But it came together because of the people that you see, not only up here, but a lot of the folks that are sitting in this room. Trading cards. That's one of the things that Elon does. It's sort of like a football or a baseball card that has the police officer's photo and biographical information on it, which forces these school children to actually go speak with that police officer in order to get that card. It brings them together and it creates that bond. National Night Out, the Dogwood Festival over in Bevan, July 4th fireworks, Christmas parades. Just think about how much manpower and resources and logistics it takes just to put on a Christmas parade, and we all pretty much do that. Medicine drop boxes, Are You Okay?, where we will contact, or each morning we'll come in, we'll call elderly people at home to make sure that they're all right. Project Safe Neighborhood. Street Safe, which was a program that's targeting some of our young drivers. I believe our DA was very instrumental, Pat Nadowski, in bringing that into the county. Annual coat drive, and we all know that these kids certainly need a coat now. It's cold as it is out there. Toys for Tots, Operation Merry Christmas, Bike Safety Rodeo, Charity Car Show, Public Safety Awareness Fairs, Crime Stoppers, Raids Online, which some of the agencies are participating in, so you can go online and actually see the types of crimes that are being reported and where they're at. Backpack program, one of the things that my assistant chief, Major Dixon, sitting in the back, started with Elon Elementary. Delivers food to needy kids on the weekend so they'll have food to eat. And it's a shame that we still have people in this country that go something. Officers in schools, and I'm not talking about just the SROs that are assigned to the schools, but I'm talking about the officers that are out on patrol who actually stop, get out of their patrol car, and will walk through that school just to talk to people and to do things. SAVE, Students Against Violence Everywhere, and SUBOC, which is Stand Up and Be a Hero, one of the things over at Graham Middle School, to target bullying, or not necessarily bullying, but anything where they see something is wrong, we encourage them to stand up and take a stand and try to do something about it. But there are just a few other things that we do. Well, those are the things that people just don't see on a daily basis, and they sort of just take for granted. But when something bad happens, it seems to me that's what everybody jumps on about. But think about the good things that we do, and I would prefer that we focus on it. Thank you.
Come on, Sheriff. New programs for the sheriff, and then Chief Baldwin will be next on those three topics.
I know everyone running behind will be brief if possible. Let me tell you something. Alamance County, where we have schools in our territory, work with the school system, do a school resource officer program. A lot of people don't know a lot of times what the school resource officers and the schools try to do. We try to identify many times those young people that have problems or headed toward law enforcement to wind up in a detention center. We are able to identify these youths, and many times our gang unit, which is made up of every agency here, we have a city-county gang unit, will come in and try to work with these young people through education and intervention. And many times we've been able to save those young people. Our DARE program is in every one of the schools here in Alamance County as far as our middle schools. We have officers teaching and working with these kids, building up their confidence and teaching those individuals how to stay away from negative peer pressure and stay away from drugs. And we try to build up a rapport with law enforcement and these kids. Junior Police Academy, which Chief mentioned, great thing. Kids are identified as possible on the wrong road and are recommended to enter the police academy. The agencies work together in this police academy during the summer with these youth, and you will be surprised the differences made. Special Olympics. I know y'all say, well, Special Olympics, that's for a special group of kids. It is, but those kids we all care about. They're our kids. Give you a good example. Sheriff's Office covers Green Level with law enforcement. When we first went into Green Level, we were seeing young kids holding drugs, and the big drug dealer would make the deal. They'd get it from the kid, take the money to the kid. And I got to talking to Miss McCullum out there, who is the town clerk. I asked her, do we have any activities out here for these young people? And she says, well, not really. We've got a beautiful park out here, ballpark. Well, we got together, raised over $22,000, bought football equipment for over 60-some kids. They had 3 different teams, pee-wees, mites, and midget football team. 2 years in a row. I had a friend with the Charlotte Hornets part owner. We carried 60-some kids to a Panthers game 2 years in a row. But the only way those kids got to go was if they produced a C average in school. And there was a lady that checked those grades. And those kids could not play if they did not maintain that average. Folks, let me tell you something. If we are going to deal with the problems we have in this nation today, we have got to start with our young people. And that means an idle mind is a devil's workshop. Think about it when you was growing up. I guarantee if I asked you to raise your hand, some of you got in trouble, you'd probably raise your hand. Why? And that's where we've got to start, folks. And these chiefs and myself, we are working every day to try to figure out what we can do with our youth. Dr. Howson, we have met with him several times on a lot of things involving our schools. But we have got to do something for our children. We need to look in our communities. What is the cause of some of the problems we have? And then, folks, we need to work together to get the money to do these programs to save these kids and quit throwing it away on things that do not work. And if we could get together as a community, as a group, that can be done. We can identify the problem, and we can deal with the problem, and we can save our young people. Thank you.
Well, folks, let's be real here. We've heard about some great programs that all of the law enforcement agencies participate in. Secondarily, the sheriff talked about some more specific youth programs and the efforts that we need to put towards reaching our youth early and often. But the reality is, we want to know what's going on with our law enforcement officers throughout the country. You want to know, you want to hear some things about why are there so many officer-involved incidents pertaining to the use of force? Why are there so many shootings? Why now are law enforcement officers being shot and killed as a result of the ongoings within our society? We're not here to say that the bad guys are all wrong and the cops are all right. We're not here to say that we want to retaliate and take out action against those who target us for no reasons at all. But we have to have an understanding of what's going on, particularly in our county and within our culture. There have been thousands of threats made against law enforcement officers in the recent weeks. Many of those you've heard about. Some of those threats have come to fruition and resulted in the deaths of officers. There are still many more out there. So we ask ourselves, what's going on? We got cop-involved shootings. We got people shooting cops in retaliation, angry at the cops. I can tell you that there have been hundreds of documented threats from Guilford to Orange counties made against your local law enforcement officers. So although we've not had the incidents, thank God, that have certainly provoked or caused any type of uproar, the potential is just around the corner. And that's what we have to look at. As a result of what's going on, many things will have to change, potentially. And not only will it have a profound effect on law enforcement, but it may affect those of you sitting before me today in our communities. So what are we going to do to fix this thing? That seems to be the overwhelming question, right? What are we going to do? How long is this going to go on? How bad is it going to get over the next couple of years, the next 5 years? When is it going to stop, and what's the solution to the problem? Well, that's ultimately what we want to know, and what we have to figure out where the solution is. So think about this for just a minute. We see on TV, we see even on reality TV, where there are law enforcement agencies that have to operate with two-man units. You thought about that? Tomorrow you wake up and you go to your respective job, wherever you're going to do your thing, and you see two officers in the Sheriff's Department car, two officers in a Grand PD car, two officers in area Burlington PD and Mebane car. Oh, folks, it can get bad if we don't address the existing issues and, again, spread the word that things have got to change. You know, we've got to do something different. When I say we, I'm talking about those on the other side, the bad guys, the good guys, but most importantly, our community members like yourselves that are here to hear about it, to hear from us. In just a couple minutes, I'm going to throw some information at you that hopefully will answer some questions that you have regarding the use of force, the use of cameras, and then some numbers regarding policing strategies and what's actually going on with your Alamance County law enforcement contingent. Camera use. Let's talk about it. Several of the chiefs kind of stole my thunder there in their introductions. Everybody kind of addressed what they were doing regarding the use of body cameras. Again, seems to be the biggest question and what some might think to be the most immediate or at least a short-term fix. But there are a lot of ups and downs to the use of body cameras. You heard the cost. This is a science for law enforcement that's still being perfected. So we're kind of in a trial and error phase. There are hundreds of vendors out there now. They see that the opportunity is there, right, to benefit from tragedy. And with that, there are so many vendors that are trying to put their product out there to law enforcement. We don't know what's best. So the experimental stage, if you will, is in progress. But what cameras do provide, body cameras in particular, first and foremost, an increased transparency and legitimacy. You know, officers have these things on their body somewhere, and literally everything they do is being seen and observed. With that in mind, inevitably it's going to increase police behavior, don't you think? But in retrospect, when Mr. Graves and I go to conversate on the sidewalk somewhere, Mr. Graves is going to see that I have that camera on. It's going to improve Mr. Graves' behavior as well, don't you think? So just huge upside to having that body camera on. In the event of a use of force circumstance, it helps expedite the resolution of complaints and lawsuits. Being able to see it, being able to hear it, helps speed up the process and brings resolution to those processes. Secondarily, it allows for more evidence for arrest and prosecution. Mr. Dawski, I think, would probably like parts of that. And then one more benefit is that it creates a lot of opportunity for police training. As you're seeing now more so than you ever have, more incidents are being documented either by audio or video recordings. With all the other benefits, it also allows us to take it back to our people and say, this is what went right, this is what went wrong, this is what we want to do, and this is what we don't want to do. And it makes it a better environment for everybody. So there are a lot of upsides to these body cameras. And with the good, as we all know what, there comes the bad, right? Or let's just say the downside in this venue. So we have good operational body cameras aboard. Everybody's up in operation. So I have that one contact with Reverend Covington out there. It was just a general conversation because body cameras don't discriminate. Reverend Covington doesn't want to hear or don't want to see that conversation that he and I had on the news the following day. It was just a general hello, how you doing, where somebody thought something bad was going on perhaps. Next thing you know, that video is being retrieved or subpoenaed to be shown. So there's the privacy issue. There's the privacy aspect that we have to look at. Secondly, where training is good on one side, it can be a downside, and it may affect how your policy is dictated. So some of these things you may be able to see and show, some you may not, and that will be argued out in the years to come, I'm sure. Citizen privacy, again. Chief Smythe at the march a couple weeks ago made a good point, and I want to reiterate it for those of you that were not there. And he started by saying, in regards to body cameras, that what if your 16-year-old or your 17-year-old child was assaulted, much worse, sexually assaulted? That initial responding officer has that body camera on. And you know what? He or she does not dictate when to push the start button, when to push the stop button. Because right now the approach is let's take them and use them for all citizen contacts. If not all citizen contacts, critical incidents. That would certainly be a critical incident, would it not? And so there's the thought of what do we do with that? What do we do in those circumstances? And how does the officer decide or dictate whether he should or shouldn't use the body cam? So we really can't differentiate at this point in time as it relates to citizen contact. So there's a lot of research, a lot of thought that still has to go into that. Then lastly, there's the cost associated with the use of body cams. Like with everything new, you know, when it first hits the market, it's usually way on up there. So the cost of equipping all of your force would be pretty significant. And are you, the taxpaying community, prepared to help cover those costs? Because you know that's how it works. Are you ready to see that influx in the budget to help substantiate those costs? I'm going to give you some numbers again in just a couple seconds. Just give you a little more food for thought in terms of good, bad, or whether you want to see this or not. Speaking of those numbers, let me tell you about Alamance County and the agencies represented. What's happening with us? the fiscal year 2000, calendar year 2013, law enforcement officers in Alamance County responded to 162,940 calls for service. 162,940 calls for service. These calls for service were answered by 355 sworn officers. And as a result of those calls, there are 8,894 arrests made. 8,894 arrests. Of those 8,894 arrests, there were 110 uses of force documented as a result of those arrests. 8894, 110 use of force reports documented. Of those uses of force, 110 of them, there were 4 complaints filed. 110 reports of use of force. 4 complaints filed. I would contend as a chief, as my brothers would, that 4 is too many. But look at the numbers. The percentage of incidents with a use of force. What this results in, the percentage of incidents with the use of force is 0.0675. 0.0675. Percent of arrests with the use of force, hands-on, etc., 1.2%. 1.2%. I think those are numbers that we all can be proud of in lieu of what's going on around us. And how do we make those numbers better? Venues like this, again, where we can continue to communicate with each other, where we're transparent with each other, and when we continue to communicate and to conversate and just make it known that in Alamance County, in our area, behavior out of the ordinary by law enforcement and behavior out of the ordinary by those that we otherwise deal with is not going to be accepted by the community as a whole. Lastly, I want to talk about use of force, and I'll sit down. As I look through the program, ladies and gentlemen, I figured out that my brothers kind of hung this one on me, especially the sheriff over there. But that's all right. We'll work through it. Again, it just speaks to the relationship. You know, it's one of those things that we can't laugh and joke, then we're probably not going to be too effective at the end of the day. And just, you know, conveying on what the group has said about our relationship, it is as good as they talk about. But what does it mean to you all? What it means is that you've got a group of agency heads that are going to communicate, and we're going to hold each other accountable for what we do. Use of force. I'll try and summarize it, and please take advantage of the forms and the information that's been provided, because I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions with regards to it. So an incident occurs where an officer or officers have to respond and deal with the subject. Most of our policies are pretty consistent and similar in nature in terms of how we deal with people that inevitably we're going to have to put our hands on or use some level of force. And generally, use of force starts with an officer's presence. So our great system says that when an officer shows up, that should be the first indicator to someone who's thinking about doing wrong, who's already done wrong, or that's somewhere in between, says, okay, you've got an officer here, something is wrong. That's the first step in most use of force continuums. Officer present. Officer shows up, all right, maybe I'm just talking loud. Maybe I'm getting slightly belligerent under the circumstances. There's an officer here now. That should be a first indicator to that subject. Hey, maybe I should back down a little bit. Secondarily, the officer or officers start to give verbal commands to a subject or subjects. So you've got an officer that showed up on scene. Then secondarily, he or she starts to give verbal commands to someone saying, hey, okay, Sheriff Johnson, that's enough. We've now gone 2 steps up in our use of force continuum. Now our courts say, our Supreme Court says that whenever we're using force as law enforcement, hear this, whenever we're using force, an officer's force should exceed the level of force being displayed by at least 1 step. So if you go into a situation where you're dealing with a subject, regardless of the circumstances, for the officer to be able to maintain control and to be able to safely carry out the assignment, he or she needs to be able to step 1 level above what that person is doing to be able to maintain control. Because you have charged us with going out and taking care of situations like that. You're not asked us to go and be right here and just maintain and go back and forth. If our level is here and the subject's level is here, who's in control? Nobody. How are we going to get the situation under control if we stay here? Now what you hope is obviously is that your presence has brought a subject down a notch, or secondary, at least your verbal commands has brought a subject's attitude, for lack of a better term, down a notch. Policies differentiate a little bit beyond the step of verbal commands. Some policies suggest a hands-on presence. If you're going to effect an arrest, that you go place hands-on. And it's usually termed or called soft hands. Why simply go up to chief and say, hey, okay, stop it. Soft hands, or the presence of hands. Again, this is policies and procedures start to change a little bit. Beyond the soft hands, you're probably in an arrest mode, and that's where your use of force continuum options start to change. For the Melbourne Police Department, for example, the officer, once the officer has placed hands-on, or hands-on as it's called, then he or she has several options, starting with the use of the taser. And the taser seems to be first in when you have to effect that arrest, simply because it doesn't require a physical confrontation. A lot of people say, well, why tasers? Why do you all use tasers? Why don't y'all try and wrestle them? If you've got 2 officers and 1 person, why don't you wrestle them? Why do you just tase them? And ladies and gentlemen, it's not because we like to see people whip them. I can tell you that. The tasers require actually less force to hands-on. The likeliness of the subject being injured and or the officer being injured is much less than when you go hands-on and you have to physically wrestle with someone. The situation continues to escalate. The officer has the option of using a baton and or pepper spray, again, depending on the circumstances. I can tell you from experience that I have dealt with subjects that tasers have only slowed and not stopped at all. I've dealt with subjects that pepper spray and or batons have only slowed or sometimes not stopped at all. And as you start to use the tools that you've been issued, you start to escalate in the level of force necessary to effect an arrest. So you go from your mere presence to having to use a control device, and then at times, unfortunately, to the level of deadly force. As we all know, no one circumstance is the same. No one officer's perception of what's going on is the same. Chief Smythe and I could deal with the same set of circumstances, and we may have two different perspectives of what was taking place, as the video kind of alluded to. There's so much more that we could discuss. There are pages and pages, case law after case law regarding the use of force. I think what we can, again, be proud of and look at as it relates to our community is that the numbers are extremely low. And our goal should be to maintain those low numbers and go forward with making those low numbers small. It's tough. It's tough for the guys and the ladies out on the street. They are dealing with circumstances that most of us didn't have to experience when we were out in the field. I close my portion by saying, let's work this thing out together. Let's play together, and let's pray together. Going forward, we'll work it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Caldwell. I think got a little Baptist ministry in it. But there was a lot of good information. We thank you. We want to invite our second group panelists up. With the DA, Pat Dowsey come up, Dr. Harrison, and I believe Reverend Covington. Is he in the building yet? And if the audience has any questions, they can start filling those questions out. There will be a gentleman that will come around. If you have any questions, he will pick up your questions. Just raise your hand, and he will pick up your questions. All surveys we can pick up at the end of the program. But any questions, just hold your hand up so we can pick up the questions. We're going to start by letting the new panelists introduce themselves. We'll start with the DA. If he will give a brief introduction, then Dr. Harrison and Dr. Covington.
My name is Pat Adowski. I'm the District Attorney for Alamance County. My office is charged with prosecuting all the crimes that occur here, and that can include instances where there has to be investigations into allegations of officer misconduct. I did want to take a moment, if that's all right, just to talk about that. So, you know, with everything that has been happening in the nation, sometimes there are misconceptions about what goes on. In my job as district attorney, my goal is to make sure that Alamance County is a safe place to live and raise our families. That's what law enforcement's, what they want to see happen. And that's what our community wants to see happen as well. But in order for that to be, there's got to be trust between our community and the law enforcement agencies and the district attorney's office. And sometimes that trust comes from how things proceed, how things move from investigation to the district attorney's office with prosecutions and things like that. So I wanted to talk about kind of what that process entails. And I'll just use instances that have happened. We've had instances of things that have happened in our jail where there's had to be investigations And oftentimes those are over allegations of excessive use of force. And in those instances, we've always had the State Bureau of Investigation come in and investigate those cases. And in those instances, the sheriff and myself have requested that. We do that because we want there to be an independent and impartial entity that's doing the investigation. And so that's what happens. And once they do that investigation, as the district attorney's office, it's my job to review those investigations. And in my job, I have to make a finding that there's actual probable cause to move forward. And that's where we look at the facts. If it's a felony charge, it has to go to a grand jury. And that's how it works. It would be presented to a grand jury. Grand juries differ at different states. In some states, the district attorney's office goes into the actual grand jury and presents it. In other states, they don't. Here in North Carolina, the district attorney's office does not step into the grand jury. It's presented by the agency that's conducting the investigation. So, for hypothetical example, in this kind of case, it would be the State Bureau of Investigation who would go into the grand jury and present that. There has to be 18 grand jurors, or excuse me, strike that. There is 18 grand jurors that are picked. There has to be a minimum of 12 grand jurors present, and there has to be a minimum of a 12 grand jury finding. For anything to be found in true bill, when something's found in true bill, that means there's actual indictment, and then it proceeds into the system where it's actually prosecuted. So I did want to talk about that. We're very fortunate here in having fantastic law enforcement agencies. It's always, when we have these issues, it's always a tragedy if there's been a situation where someone has been hurt or even killed. And it's important that the community has trust in the process and the process that occurs after that. So I've talked about that so that we have an understanding of how that process works. Thank you.
I'm Bill Harrison. I'm the interim superintendent of schools. I've been here since July. And one of the things that has really struck me about this community is the level of collaboration, the level of cooperation. The various agencies who all work together to make this a better community for all of us do a great job of working together in a substantive manner. I've worked in a number of communities. I do an awful lot of talking about it, but never really get there. And some of the best partnerships and best relationships that we have in the Alamance-Burlington school system are with our law enforcement agencies that provide much, much more than school resource officers. Sheriff Johnson stole a little bit of my thunder, some of the youth programs that we have. But I think the presence of the officers and the caliber of the officers and the deputies that serve as school resource officers serve as wonderful, wonderful models for our students. And they're not there as disciplinarians. They're there as support. They're there to build relationships, and they do that. And our youngsters look up to them and grow from the opportunities they have to interact with them. And what we're all about, when we think about the conversation that we've heard tonight, our job as a school system is to make sure that the youngsters that we get as 5 years old or 4 years old in our pre-K programs only have positive interactions with these individuals over here. So I think if we come together as a community and provide the opportunities for all of our students and give all of our kids the opportunities to be successful, I think they will. And one of the things I often say to my colleagues in the school system is that we have, I don't know how many 5-year-olds start kindergarten every year, but I've been in this business for 40 years, and I've never seen a 5-year-old, I've never seen a kindergartner on the first day of school that's not excited about school. And what our job is and what our challenge is to keep that level of excitement, to keep kids engaged. And some of the ways we keep kids engaged are working with these agencies and some of the things that they're talking about. So we're committed, first and foremost, we want our youngsters to be in a safe environment. That's the first thing, the primary thing that a parent wants when they send their child to school in the morning. They want them to come home looking like they did when they left, for the most part. Maybe a little bit dirty, but they want it to be safe and they want it to be secure. And so it has to start with that, and we have to have many partners to do that, and we have many programs in place, and you have a lot of questions, and you don't want to listen to me for too much longer, but please be assured that the first thing on the minds of all of us, from our Board of Education, who has provided great support for me since I've been here, from our central services staff, all of our principals, all of our teachers, before we can do anything else, we concern ourselves with making sure our youngsters are safe. Thank you.
Thank you for My name is Larry Covington. I pastor the Ebenezer United Church of Christ. I'm in my 20th year at that particular congregation. But prior to coming to Ebenezer, I was a part of on the staff of South Florida Reception Center in Miami, Florida, one of the largest reception centers in the South, there as a clinical social worker and also a chaplain. Prior to that, I worked with law enforcement in the island of Bermuda. And prior to that, of course, I worked with in the jails and prison systems in Lynchburg, Virginia. Here in Alamance County, besides pastoring a wonderful, loving, thriving congregation, I served as 5 years on the local Burlington Police Force as a chaplain. And I see Terry out there from First Baptist Broad Street, the other First Baptist. He's there, and we served together on the chaplaincy force here in Alamance County, the Burlington Police Department. And had a wonderful relationship with the chiefs that I've worked with. And I am excited about the chief we now have in our city. As a pastor, and also as a chaplain, also as a clinical social worker in a jail and reception center environment, and spent a large part of my ministry working with both inmates as well as detention officers, as well as police officers, and as well as pastoring parishioners. I've seen all sorts of sides of law enforcement. I'm proud to be in this Alamance County community, and I think we have wonderful partners in the local Alamance County police community. And I will be quiet because I'm a preacher and I can talk a long time.
We have a lot of questions, so we're going to get started with some of the questions. One of the things is we all know that why we're here is the catalyst was the things that are happening around the nation in Ferguson, Ohio, New York. We know that's the catalyst, but we want to make sure that that doesn't happen here. Or if that situation like that happens here, that we feel safe in this community, that the law enforcement officials will handle and do the right thing. That's what this forum is all about. But there is the politics involved in these situations. And I told a friend of mine the other day, I was talking to him, I said, if somebody's breaking in my home, I'm not going to call Al Sharpton, and I'm not going to call Bill O'Reilly. I'm going to call one of you guys, or somebody that works for you guys. But the perception is there is concerns on racial lines that is happening in this nation. And we all know that, and that needs to be faced. Can some of you chiefs talk about the politics and the racial overtones that are in some of the decisions that are happening around the nation today? Because we got a lot of questions about racial inequality. I would say the sheriff was going to answer all this.
Boy, I owe you. I believe you'd ask this crowd to tell you I'm not a politician. Let me just say this. There is racial overtones in this nation. And what I was talking about earlier, when I was talking about looking at the real root causes of this, and let's try to correct that. You know, we can sit and point fingers all day long at each other. There's not but one race in this world, and that is the human race. We have different people that grow up with different problems, but we're all the human race. And some of that comes from growing up. I look back when I was at Southern High School. That was when we had the schools starting to mix. And I can tell you right now, neither group of kids wanted to be there. But once we realized that, and one of my classmates, Don, stand up. Don, why don't you stand up? You sitting there in the back, I see you. Right there. Let me tell you something. We realized it. It took us working together in that high school to understand that we had to adapt and do what we had to do to be successful. And the school come together and did it. We have done it. We have got to do the same thing in our communities. Yes, they are racial injustices out here. They are biases out here. But we have allowed that. We as society has allowed that. And we have got to come together and look at the root causes of what's happening because of that as you come up. I can tell you right now, I could have been a catastrophe as a child. I grew up, I was known as a lint head in Swepsonville, North Carolina. Y'all know what that is. Because I grew up outside.
What's a lint head?
Do what? Don't have me hair. That's why. But, and I could have went the way some of the other kids there went. But simply, some people cared for me. And that's what we got to do as a society. We have got to care for every human being. And we have got to look at their problems. And by George, let's quit throwing money to foreign countries and everything, and let's look at addressing the problems in our nation. And that's what we've got to do, Mr. Grace. We have got to find the causes, and we need to deal with it. We need to develop programs that will deal with these issues. And when we do, then you're going to see a change in America. Thank you.
This is for all the chiefs. What is the racial diversity among your department, and can that diversity be improved? So I guess they want a breakdown of how many white officers, black officers, what is the percentage of black officers in your departments?
I'll get the ball rolling. For Graham, we're 35 sworn officers. I have 2 African-American employees. I have, that's something we strive to change every day. We are an accredited agency. We have been for numerous years as well, like Burlington. Something we have a recruitment plan. We go to job fairs, we go to different places where we're trying to recruit minorities. And we, quite frankly, we don't get the applications we like. That is something that we would like to have changed. I would like to have an agency that represents our community. Right now, we are falling short of that. We've always been aware of it, trying to change it. Haven't made much progress. I would like to see that change, and anything that I could do, any comments from the community at large would be greatly appreciated in that regard, and I would pass along to someone else who'd like to add to it if they could.
Well, I certainly agree that your police department should be reflective of the community that you serve. Out of 15, I have 1 opening right now, but we have 2 African American males, we have 2 females, and one of the females that work for the Gibsonville Police Department is the second in command. So we're always looking for good people. So if you know anyone out there that's looking for a good job, please send them our way. But I'd like to expand a little bit on what the sheriff said about that it starts with our kids. It starts with our youth. And unfortunately, it seems like that with a lot of budget cuts that we've had to endure over the years, that we're pulling a lot of those officers out of these schools. We're not having the interaction with these kids that we had at one time. And I can be quite frank about the fact that one of the things that really just burns me up is to be out in public somewhere and you see a child misbehaving, and the first thing a parent tells that child is, if you don't straighten up, I'm going to get the police officer to come up here and straighten you out. Well, I've had that told, I've heard that on more than one occasion, and normally my response is, son, you don't have to worry about it, but I will take care of the father there, or I will take care of the mother. I don't like that. I think we're sending the wrong message. But secondly, and I was looking at some stuff the other day, and this is a quote by Ronald Reagan. And I think that we could all probably take a little something from this. We must reject the idea that anytime a crime is committed or broken, society is guilty. Bottom line is that we need to start holding people accountable for their own actions. And quite frankly, we don't do that. And we don't even do that in our, I see a lot of, my kids are involved in sports a lot. And coming up with a lot of these teams, it seems like, no matter how well you did or no matter how bad you did, you still get a trophy. Because we're all winners. But that's not the way life is. Some of us lose. And I think that we need to get back to being realistic in what we do. And when people go out and do things that they're not supposed to do, they need to be held accountable. It's not our fault. It's their fault.
Chief Parrish, before you pass the mic, I read in the paper, I think it was yesterday, that the town of Gibsonville did a proclamation that basically said we support our police department, and that's nice. But I also heard you say that they haven't kept up with the times as far as the census is concerned, and that you're undermanned. So a proclamation is nice, but would you not need more officers? Is that more important than a proclamation?
The mayor's looking at you.
I know. That's why I said.
Well, the first budget retreat that I went to, one of the things that I told the Board of Aldermen was that we were understaffed by around 6 people. The population in Gibsonville from 2000 up till this past year has increased over 50%. Over 50%. The number of officers grew 0 during that time period. Up until this past year, and then I got 1 additional officer. So, if we were keeping up with the times, if I had 14 officers back in the year of 2000, population was increased by 50%, you would think that I'd have, how many officers, Mayor? I would certainly have more than I do. But let me say this, the Board of Aldermen and the Mayor has been very gracious and they've been very generous to me in the fact that a year ago, you didn't have cars for police officers. You didn't have a single camera in a single car. You didn't have a computer in a single car. And some of the complaints that I got from the community was, I don't ever see those officers. Where are they at? Well, quite frankly, they go out and they take a report, and you've already heard me say about how many calls for service we had. They have to come back to the police department and go in there and sit down and do their report. At least now they can do those reports while they're out in their automobile, and they can still be seen and they can still respond to calls for services. So I have to commend the fact that the Board of Aldermen gave me that money to put those cameras in there. They gave me that money to put those computers in there. And we talk almost on a daily basis about some of the needs that we have.
Well, I still think it goes to public safety, because if you have an undermanned staff, then you have people that are working more hours and are stressed out, and could lead to situations that may not have to happen. So, I know you have to do the dance. I don't. I'm just saying, I think that, and this is not just for Gibsonville, this is for Burlington, this is for the county. We do live in a county where taxes are very sacred. You do anything, down the bus, wear boots, but don't raise taxes. And so I think when it's talking about public safety, that needs to be addressed, and I think that's why we and the administrators come to this forum, not just you guys, because you guys ask for these things. It is those people that have to provide. So I know we got to get to a lot of more questions, but we did have, can we get to how many black officers are in each department?
Hispanic.
Or, okay, Hispanic, non-white, Asian.
Well, as I said, I have two black officers and 2 females that work with the Gibsonville Police Department. But I'll say this too. One of the things that the mayor, the manager, and the Board of Aldermen has heard me say multiple times is that the most important thing that government does is protect its citizens. And you do that through public safety. If I had $1 every time I said that, I would probably be making a pretty decent salary too. So.
I think the Alamance County Sheriff's Office sitting here trying to count. I think we have 5 Hispanics, and I think our other is around 12 or 13% African American.
For the Haw River Police Department, we have 8 officers. We don't have a lot of turnover in our police department. It's been 3 years since we had it open. We have 8 white officers. Quite frankly, when we opened up the application pool, we don't have anybody else apply. I am losing an employee at the end of this month to our famous sheriff's department here. We will have an opening, and we have an ad coming out in the Times News tomorrow. We welcome any applications that come in.
Chief, Medford Police Department, 27 sworn again. 1 African American, you're looking at it. 1 Hispanic American, and I think we had 5 or 6 female employees, 2 of which are in supervisory positions. And let me just say this, because inevitably you're looking to say, you got an African American chief, and I want to be very transparent about it. It's tough, y'all. We meet all the time and we discuss, try and come up with strategies for minority recruitment, minority hiring. My opinion is this, is that we're going to have to dig deep into the community, first and foremost. Secondarily, I think we're going to have to reach back to a very young age to really start to try and recruit and draw and create programs that may entice our minority youth in general to have an interest in law enforcement. There's so many obstacles and barriers that they incur, whether it be society, whether it be community, based barriers that they have to overcome. And what we're hoping as law enforcement officers and agencies is that they not experience something between ages 8, perhaps, and even 21, 22 years old that has not deterred them from having an interest in law enforcement. I think this alludes to everything that we've talked about tonight, in that it starts with communicating with our youth, the people that know right from wrong, communicating with our youth, and helping to guide and steer. I can tell you that there is a huge desire and a huge interest in drawing minority applicants and having our numbers match our respective communities. But it's going to take an effort beyond law enforcement. It's going to have to encompass the community as a whole to make this happen.
At Elon, we have very little turnover. We have, I said earlier that we have 15 officers, but we presently have 14 because we have an opening. And so, just like my fellow chiefs here, we are actively recruiting. We have an ad in the paper right now. We have it on the internet. We're putting word of mouth out. We have, out of those 14, we have, they're all white, not males. We have 2 females who are on our command staff. We have 4 lieutenants, and 2 of those are females. And we're actively recruiting African American candidates. Make no bones about it. I'm involved. I grew up in cross-cultural situations, as many of you have, diverse backgrounds. My church I attend is multicultural. My pastor is African American. We've been friends for years. We've had many conversations like we're talking about right here, without beating around the bush and saying, what do we do to come together? And oftentimes it's intentionality. You have to be intentional. And that's what we're doing at Elon. We sit down and we say, no apologies. We want to better reflect the community. We want to dip into the talent pool. There is talent out there. It's not just a number. And see, there's a fine line when we discuss this, because we don't want to get into just numbers, because people are more than numbers. And you get into that situation where you don't want to sit around and say, I've got this many black people on my staff. You know what I'm saying? That's not what it's about, because it's a police officer, it's an administrator, it's a public servant. The town manager for Elon is African American, but that's not what I see. I see a fine man who's my boss, who I have a great deal of respect for. Our town clerk is African American, but that's not who I see. I see a young lady who's my friend who does her job well. My administrative assistant is African American, but she's not the black lady that works at the front office. She works for the town of Elon, serves the community, probably has as many contacts with the public as officers do. People are constantly coming in that door. And the biggest issue, we talk about law enforcement nowadays, but you know where people get probably the most uncomfortable and have the most interaction with law enforcement, and it crosses all cultural lines? Parking enforcement. Parking enforcement. We've all been there. So every person that walks in that door is either, not all the time, but a lot of them are paying tickets, or they have issues with that. It does a wonderful job of just interacting with the community. But, so that's what we at Elon are striving to do, and try to do a better job of. And make no bones about it, the intent at the end of January is to have our positions filled. And I'd love to have them filled with a minority candidate. And that's going to be the goal, because I'm going to be intentional about that.
Let us do this from up here, okay? Thank you. I got Chief's wife. If we can just get a number, and then we can get to a couple of questions.
Sure. So I have 125 police officers. 77% of them are white males. 23% are female or persons of color. I have 1 American Indian officer, 2 Hispanic officers, about a dozen African American officers, and then the balance are white males. Let me say one more thing, just quickly. So we're at 77% white males, but in the last year and a half, the people that we've hired, more than 50% have not been white males. So I guarantee you we do our absolute best to move in the right direction.
Can one of the chiefs address how much exactly does the body cam cost for anybody?
Yeah, the body cameras run at least $1,000 depending on the model. That's just for the camera. That doesn't account for any kind of data storage after the fact, which whether you do it on the cloud or in-house has widely divergent costs.
Questions about videos in the police cars. Can those videos be erased by the officer?
No.
Are complaints documented on each officer? Are they documented on the record? And how many complaints do an officer have to have before they have a psychological evaluation?
I'll pop fly and then you guys clean up on forward. We have an early warning system in Burlington, and so not just complaints, but uses of force, car crashes, excessive sick leave, all of those get dumped into a database that pops out for the supervisor, this alert that we need to look more closely at an officer's behavior. I don't think the law allows us to just summarily send someone for a psychological evaluation, regardless of the number of complaints. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I don't think that's an industry practice anywhere. But we all look at those red alert warnings and evaluate them accordingly across the systems that we have.
I concur with what Chief Smythe said. There's really no magic number, especially when you're a small department like ours. If you have a problem officer, it certainly rears its head pretty quickly, and you know that. As far as complaints, we talked about this the other day. A lot of times you'll get phone calls in. It's not really a complaint as much as it is a misunderstanding about what may have transpired. And so really we had 0 complaints. And I think that speaks volumes about the officers and the way they interact with the public. I mean, if you can go an entire year without a complaint, other than a misunderstanding, and I think these guys are actually doing what we paid them to do, and I commend them for that.
I'll touch on that just a minute. In Greg, we take complaints any way they come in. They can be by telephone, by email, by written letter, by walking in the front office, by being an anonymous complaint. I want to hear every complaint there is, and each one will be fully investigated to see about if it was something that needs to be handled or not. And if so, we will handle it accordingly. So, Mr. Graves, we don't really have one that says when we will send one for a psychological eval. We have. It just depends on the situation. But we take all complaints, no matter how we get them, we investigate them all thoroughly.
This is a good question I was going to ask myself. I was reading a quote from William Parker, Chief of Police of Los Angeles Police Department during the 50s and 60s, I believe. And he made the quote, he said, we are unfortunately going to have incidents like this because unfortunately we have to choose candidates from the human race, which means people make mistakes. This question, there are actually three questions. Are there any bad cops? Do cops make mistakes? Do cops ever lie?
One more time. Are there any bad cops?
Yeah.
Do they make mistakes?
Yeah.
Do they lie?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's true because we're dealing with, again, human beings. I can tell you that we all do our very best when we do our pre-hire screening. We have background investigators. We have psychological testing. We have oral appraisal boards. We have numerous steps for any applicant to come in to try to weed out those folks that would not be a good candidate to serve in our community. Once we have those, we have officers that get complaints, and we investigate them thoroughly. We remove those officers. We hold them accountable. Sometimes we charge them criminally if that is the case. We were all charged with that in our community as being our leaders of our agencies to make sure that we have the best people on staff that we can have and to identify those individuals. We'd like to be transparent of our operation. If we have complaints in our community, we take them seriously. So yes, unfortunately that is true. We're dealing with any people, and I think it would probably apply to any profession if you want to talk about it like that all those are true as well.
To Dr. Covington and Dr. Harrison, what more can the community do to involve youth with the law enforcement community in a more positive manner? And for Dr. Harrison, I would say other than DARE and school resource officers. And I would like to know, do every school have a resource officer?
As a local pastor in this community, first I speak on our church. We try to do whatever we can to deal with young people that are moving toward negative behavior. We have a mentoring program. We do other kinds of things. We have a gym that's open to the community. We have second chance programs for young people. We try to work with single parents and that kind of thing. Also, our church interacts with what's available in our community, be it sit on certain boards and with juvenile programs or what have you. So we try to, I think the key for the church is, and that's a misnomer, that's a myth. Sometimes the myth is that everybody belongs to the church. So we get pastors to speak for the total community. Not everybody go to church. So we try to respect people who are non-church, unchurched, without faith or whatever. But the church sits in the community to serve the whole community. And that's what we try to do at our church. We're not always successful, but that's what we try to do. The second thing is we try to, in particular in the African American community, where there is seemingly a suspicion and a general distrust toward police, we try to make sure that our church is open to our law enforcement officers, because they are human. They attend our churches. They are people too. They live in our communities. They're more than just people who wear uniforms and guns, etc. They are real people. They have families, husbands and wives, etc. children. So making sure that we are pro-police, pro-safety, try to encourage our community to get involved in neighborhood watch and night out and those kinds of things. So those are some of the kinds of things that our church does. I think that any church that has the community in its heart will try to do.
We have school resource officers in all of our high schools and all of our middle schools, and then we have a limited number serving our elementary schools that move around in our presence. I think in addition to the school resource officer and the DARE program, I think we signed an agreement relative to gang awareness and gang education and law enforcement agencies, as well as the school system working together. A couple folks have mentioned the Youth Police Academy, which is an incredible program I had the opportunity to learn about. A number of informal programs, again, going back to some of the things that Sheriff Johnson mentioned. So I think officers showing up and just being there informally, not coming out and having lunch and being on our campuses. And we also have a great relationship with faith. Basically, there are a number of churches that are formally involved in some of our schools and providing great support to our students. So what I've learned over the years is young people who have an advocate have a much better chance for success. So whether it be a police officer or a sheriff's deputy, a member of the congregation, that someone comes in and takes an interest in one of our young people and someone that they can go to, the probability of that youngster being successful is enhanced dramatically.
I believe to Sheriff Johnson and Chief Smythe, is it okay for the church to hand out IDs to undocumented individuals? Also, another question is, if I'm reading this correctly, and forgive me if I don't read it exactly right, I do wear glasses, but what is being done for the Latino community so that they know that they are is either enrolled or entitled to police protection, whether they are documented or not?
Okay, let me answer that first question, or the second question. You said, we respond to calls for service. We don't ask, are you undocumented, are you documented? We had a program up until this year. We took several families, but every year at Christmas time, we would take up to 100, I think last year was like 169 families to do Christmas party. Over 50% of those was of the Latino community. We did not ask if they were legal or illegal. We didn't care. What we do care about at the Alamance County Sheriff's Department are those individuals that come to the United States or settle here for the purpose of violating the law. And we're not going to back off of that at the Sheriff's Office. If you want to come here and not violate the law, we could care less. Secondly, I'm going to do as we always do as far as IDs. I do not care if a church issues an ID. I do not care if another law enforcement agency recognizes a church-issued ID. The problem we have at the Alamance County Sheriff's Department, and this is a stand I have always stood with, we will recognize the same IDs that the state and federal government recognizes, and that is a government-issued ID, or could be a church-issued ID with other documentation to show who they are. We have honestly booked people in our jail that has come to the detention center as an inmate and found 5 or 6 different names, and that they had been in the jail several times before under different names. We had one situation at the Department of Motor Vehicles we were called to, where a father and a son had brought a birth certificate from their foreign country there, and there was 21 years difference in the individuals. However, the birth certificate, the first birth certificate number was 00131, and the second birth certificate was 1000132, which means nobody was born in 21 years. As birth certificate. These are the type of documents that are being displayed to get false IDs. We had situations where we have busted document labs where they were making the matricular cards, where they were making false Social Security numbers. We had one driver's license, Chief, that was made from a stolen driver's license machine from the DMV office. How we called the driver's license was it's Hall River, Hawriber, North Carolina. So, as a sheriff, I'm responsible for people coming into that jail. And if we do not know the true identity of the individual coming in, we may wind up putting a gang member in with a rival gang member. If we know the real name and we can do some background on that individual, we have a whole lot more knowledge before we put them in incarceration with other people. And I'm telling you, you the public hold me responsible for your tax dollar. All it takes is one lawsuit to drain the money from the public. And we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure that the people are who they are when they come in our country.
Our River didn't graduate from the Alamance Burlington school system.
He sure did. Yes, I think the first half of the question is accepting IDs, and I've been on the record a number of times over the last couple of months. It's a totality of the circumstances for us. So we're going to look at everything a person has and then make a decision about whether we believe them or not. You can fake a driver's license, you can fake a church ID, you can fake a passport, and we're going to evaluate every document and make an informed decision. But if you're a victim or a witness, we don't really care. We want to hear your story. We want to know what the information is so that we can police the community and keep them safe. So how do we do that? We've identified a Spanish-speaking officer to be a PIO, to be able to reach out to Que Pasa and some of the other media outlets and do so in Spanish and a native tongue to convey the information that we have to the public. We, in our zones, we identified Hispanic communities and those officers build relationships there. We work with the advocacy groups in our community, whether that's Lupe, Catholic Charities, Fairness Alamance, you name the group that is an advocate, and we will meet with them and partner with them and attempt to the best of our ability to convey the information that we're here for every person who resides in Alamance County. So that's what we do work with.
We're long past our time, but I think Harold Williams is here, Ronnie Walsh. I don't think they're going to put us out. We just go for about 10 more minutes to 8:30. To Pat, to the DA, if an officer is charged with a crime, who makes the decision to charge that officer or not? Should a grand jury be convened? Who makes that decision?
Well, what happens with, and I'll just use it for all charges, it's actually going to depend on whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor. If it's a misdemeanor, it goes directly, it's charged on a warrant, it doesn't go to a grand jury. If it's a felony charge, it has to go to a grand jury for the case to continue on and be prosecuted. So, as I said earlier, oftentimes as the district attorney's office, we prosecute the cases, but there has to be an investigation prior to our prosecution. So there's an investigation, and as the prosecutor, we review those investigations as we do in all cases, not only law enforcement involved cases, which we're talking about now. So we have to review those. Some instances are clear cut, and we can make our call. We have had cases here in Alamance County which have involved law enforcement officers. Some of those cases are clear cut, and I can make a decision that there's not going to be any charges. I've had cases that were clear cut the other way, where we've actually had to charge. It's unfortunate. These are cases where there's a grave failure, where we've had to charge a law enforcement officer with a crime. But if they've committed a crime, nobody's above the law. We have to do what we have to do to prosecute those cases. So there's going to be a difference between whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony. If it's a felony charge, it's two prongs step where I have to decide as the prosecutor whether there's probable cause that exists for that charge. And then it's presented to a grand jury, and the grand jury hears the evidence, not from the district attorney, but from the law enforcement agency that's investigating the case. And as I said earlier, oftentimes that is the SBI, which is an independent organization, independent from the entity for which that officer actually works, and they would present it to the grand jury. And if 12 of the grand juries so find that there is probable cause that exists for that charge, then they will make that finding and they'll write into the indictment that there is a true bill. And then the charge continues on after there with prosecution, which in eventual trial of that matter.
Do any of you offer, and I'm assuming you're talking about the sheriff and chief, scholarships or internships for high school or college students other than the police academy?
Yes would be the quick answer, but yeah, I've got a high school student interning currently. I've got 2 Elon college students interning currently, and we turn those positions over as frequently as we can, and maximize our volunteer opportunities as well as those internships. So yeah, absolutely.
Quickly before it gets to the sheriff, because I might not get it back, we have interns that they have routinely worked for us, and we've been fortunate enough that they actually interned and actually come to work for us, and one went up to work for Burlington, but that's okay, it stayed in business. We have several that have worked as interns and came work full-time for us. It's worked out great for us.
We've had several interns that interned at the Alamance County Sheriff's Department. Also, one of the things that North Carolina Sheriff's Association does is give so many $1,000 scholarships per year to individuals that want to go into the criminal justice system. And a sheriff can submit a name if that individual plans to go in the field of criminal justice upon graduation.
We do not have scholarship money, but we do at times offer BLET sponsorships for them to go to our local basic law enforcement training academy.
Yeah, Rapid PD as well. We do internships. We have on several occasions we've been able to do so, and also sponsor students for the local BLET.
We do the same. We have a mentoring program for high school students. We have high school students come through our department. We have one right now. He visits us all the time. It's become a second home for him. We have college internships in our department, and some have gone into law enforcement in Elon Agency, or Elon University has one of our interns working as a police officer for them, other departments. And we also sponsor folks for BLET, and we recruit those folks. And when you intern, when I was at SBI, they had an intern program, and oftentimes what internships give you is it gives you a guaranteed look in the applicant pool. So it's good to get involved in that. And you don't have to necessarily be in a criminal justice background or any of those things. You can come. We will help try to learn from our interns, because we do. We get youth, we get enthusiasm. It keeps us sharp. We interact with those folks, and then we want to see, again, the talent go out into our community. So if they want to be something else besides law enforcement, we advocate for that, because we want them to be involved in our community, and we want that talent to stay and to grow and to flourish, and it makes good citizens and helps us all. So that's ongoing programs that we do.
There are a lot of questions, and I think we are going to have to call it a night, but there are a lot of questions about racial diversity, training. There are questions about mental health training. What type of training do you offer your officers for as mental health, dealing with people that have mental health issues. And there are some questions about printed material, about the information that you have presented tonight. Is there any material or website that they can go to concerning the body cams, the cost of the body cams, things like that? There's some question about gangs in the schools. It was Dr. Harrison. Are we having a lot of issue with gangs in schools? And are you having enough help with local law enforcement to curb that problem, or what are you doing to prevent those problems? Again, we're running out of time, but I think some of these gentlemen would be willing to stay around. And for some of your questions we did not get answered tonight, they probably will stay around and answer a couple of questions. But I do want to say a couple of things in closing. I want to first thank all the officers and chiefs and administrators that came out tonight. This is another first step. Dr. Harrison, DA, Captain Dosky, Reverend Dr. Larry Covington for coming out. This is a first step We plan to have other forums. We also will announce, I've talked to Reverend Covenant even, saying that I was going to get everybody's checkbook, but he did say it was a good idea that we have an annual picnic to support our law enforcement officials. I hope to get on the agenda of the next police chiefs meeting and present that to them. We would like for that to be an annual thing. We would also like for that to go from each town, Burlington, Harvard, everybody has a beautiful park that they can house these things. We would like to work with all churches that will be willing to work, but we also want to make sure that the focus is on the youth to help serve and interact with our police department. I believe that we should plant the trees that we may not benefit the shade from, but our kids is the ones that we need to make sure that they understand that law enforcement is a friend to them, which is what I was brought up learning and knowing and being taught in high school. I don't know if that's taught anymore. We'd like to thank the Dave Wright, the people at the Paramount. We'd also like to thank the city staff of Burlington, also at the Canoga Senior Center, who we were going to have it there first. They worked very hard, very diligent to try to get us in that building. We really thank them. And we'd like to say, for all the officers that are in attendance, would they please stand? We sincerely thank our officers in this community. We cannot do anything about what's happening in Ferguson, Missouri, or New York, or Ohio. We can protect our little geography on God's green earth, which is Alamance County here. And we want to make sure that we have confidence that if anything ever happens in this community, we feel safe and secure that the leadership that's on this stage, the leadership that makes up the county administration, will make the right decision, and the DA's office will make the right decision, and will be safe and secure that they will do just that. We thank our officers for their service. We know that in any other capacity, any other occupation, when they put on their uniform and go out the door each morning, that's a possibility, a high probability that they will not come back home in any other occupation. And they do that for the service of us. And so we thank them for their service. That's a good And I was just told by the chief that he wants something, he has something to say. And he has a badge and a gun, so he can say it.
Thank you. I just offer up that I'll coordinate with Mr. Graves and get some of the remaining questions that need to be answered, and I'll work with the panel and create a document that we post on my webpage and link to yours, guys, if that's possible. And so give us a week or 10 days to accomplish that, and we'll try to answer every single question to the best of our ability and make that information available to you. And then if you turned in a comment sheet and your contact information is there, we'll do our very best to get back with you in a timely manner and continue to explore your ideas for our improvements. So thank you all very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.